Why do avoidants always return to the people they pushed away? You know the pattern. The avoidant in your life pulls back, creates distance, maybe even ends the relationship. You think it's over. You start moving on. Then, out of nowhere, a text, a call, a casual, "How are you doing?" That seems innocent but feels loaded with meaning. This isn't coincidence. This isn't them being wishy-washy or indecisive. There's something specific happening here that most people completely miss. I've watched this cycle play out more times than I can count, and once you understand what's really driving it, everything about how avoidance operates starts to click. When avoidants leave, they're not actually leaving you. They're running from feeling too much. Most people think avoidants pull away because they don't care. That's backwards. They pull away because they care more than they know how to handle. So what happens after they create all that space they thought they needed? At first, there's relief. They can breathe again. They feel normal. They remember why they like being single so much. For weeks, maybe months, they feel like they made the right call. Then the relief wears off and something else creeps in. Boredom. Loneliness. The kind of quiet that feels too quiet. In an avoidance head, after they've pushed someone away, they start by focusing on everything that felt wrong. They replay the moments when they felt suffocated. They remind themselves why being alone is better. They build a case for why leaving was smart. But slowly, different memories start sneaking in. The way you made them laugh. How relaxed they felt around you when you weren't trying to get closer. The times when being together felt easy instead of complicated. These good memories don't hit them like a truck. They trickle in. A song comes on that you both liked. They pass a restaurant you went to together. Someone says something that reminds them of you. And this is where things get tricky. Avoidants are usually pretty good at pushing away uncomfortable feelings. But positive memories of real connection are different. They're harder to ignore because deep down, avoidants want connection just like everyone else, even if they're scared of it. The longer they're gone, the more these memories pile up. They start wondering if maybe they overreacted. Maybe you weren't as clingy as they thought. Maybe the relationship wasn't as overwhelming as they remembered. They don't come back because they've figured out how to be better at relationships. They come back because missing someone eventually hurts more than being scared of getting too close. Think about it like this. Avoidants are always juggling two things they need. They need their space and freedom to feel okay, but they also need connection and love, just like everybody else. When they push people away, they solve the first problem but create a bigger second problem. The independence they fought for starts feeling empty when there's no one special to share it with. The freedom they protected starts feeling lonely instead of liberating. This is why avoidants don't usually come back right away. It takes time for the loneliness to feel worse than the fear. It takes time for them to realize that you weren't actually the problem. Their own anxiety about getting close was. Something most people don't get about how avoidants think about relationships. When they're in them, they notice every little thing that feels limiting. Every disagreement, every expectation, every time they feel pressured to open up more. But when they're out of them, that changes. Without dealing with intimacy every day, they can finally see what was actually good. They remember the easy moments, the genuine laughs, the times when you just got each other. This is why avoidants often put past relationships on a pedestal, not because those relationships were perfect, but because memory is selective, and distance lets them focus on the parts they couldn't appreciate when they were freaking out about getting too close. When they come back, they're not coming back to the relationship they left. They're coming back to the version they remember, the highlight reel, not the full movie. The problem is, they're returning with the same basic fear that made them leave originally. They haven't necessarily learned to handle intimacy better or communicate more clearly. They've just decided that being alone sucks more than being scared. This creates the cycle that drives people insane. The avoidant comes back. Things are great for a while, but then the same old stuff starts happening. They feel overwhelmed again. They start pulling back. And maybe they leave again. Understanding this cycle matters because just taking an avoidant back doesn't usually fix anything long-term. The core issue, their fear of losing themselves when they get close, is still there. They've just temporarily decided that connection is worth the risk. What actually brings avoidance back might surprise you. It's usually not dramatic love confessions or desperate attempts to win them back. Those things actually push them further away because they prove the avoidance point that the other person is too dependent. What brings them back is often the opposite, seeing that you're fine without them. When they notice you've kept living your life, doing your thing, staying independent, it messes with their story that you were too needy. Suddenly, the relationship doesn't look as threatening. If you can be happy and whole without them, then maybe being with them wouldn't mean giving up who you are. Maybe closeness doesn't have to equal losing yourself. This is why people who chase avoidance rarely get them back, while those who actually move on with their lives often do. It's not a game, it's about proving the thing avoidants are most afraid of losing, the ability to be your own person. When an avoidant does come back, most people get so excited that they immediately try to lock things down to make sure they won't leave again. This is exactly the wrong move. When avoidants return, they're feeling conflicted. Part of them wants the connection, but part of them is still scared of it. If you respond by getting clingy or demanding or trying to nail down the relationship, you'll trigger the same fears that made them bolt before. The people who actually succeed with returning avoidance get this instinctively. They're happy to see them, but don't make the relationship their whole world. They keep their own life, friends, and interests. They let the avoidant choose connection without feeling trapped by it. Avoidants rarely come back just once. They often need several rounds of leaving and coming back before they feel secure enough to really commit. This isn't necessarily bad, even though it's frustrating. Each cycle can teach them something new about their own patterns. There's a darker side to this, though. Some avoidants get hooked on the cycle itself. They figure out they can have it both ways: connection when they want it, independence when they need it, without ever having to deal with the scary parts of real intimacy. These avoidants use coming back as a way to manage loneliness without actually growing. They return not because they've learned anything new, but because they've learned they can control the whole dynamic by leaving and coming back whenever they want. You can tell the difference by watching what's actually different when they return. Are they more aware of their patterns? Will they talk about why they left and what they learned? Are they making real changes, or do they just expect everything to go back to normal without taking any responsibility for the impact of their departure? What most people don't realize is how avoidants experience memory differently than other people. Most of us remember relationships as a story that unfolds over time, meeting, getting closer, building intimacy, sharing experiences. Avoidants don't work like this. They remember relationships in pieces, like snapshots that don't connect into a full picture. When they're feeling suffocated, they can only see the overwhelming parts. When they're lonely, they can only access the good parts. This explains why avoidants can be so contradictory about the same relationship. 1 month, they'll describe their ex as clingy and demanding. 6 months later, they'll talk about the same person with real fondness, focusing on completely different moments. They're not lying or playing games. They literally remember different pieces of the relationship depending on how they're feeling right now. This is also why trying to argue with an avoidant about their contradictory behavior doesn't work. You can't logic someone out of emotional responses that shift based on their current mood and fears. Avoidants also handle regret differently. Most people feel bad about specific things they said or did. Avoidants feel bad about being the type of person who has these problems with closeness in the first place. They don't just regret leaving, they regret needing to leave. This deeper kind of regret can take a long time to develop, which is why some avoidants come back years later, long after you've forgotten about them. The timing of when avoidants come back often seems random, but there's usually a trigger. Big life changes tend to set them off. New jobs, moving, significant birthdays, family deaths, seeing friends in happy relationships. These events make them think about connection and meaning in ways they usually avoid. During these moments, memories of real connection feel more important than fears about losing independence. They reach out not because they've necessarily changed, but because what matters to them has temporarily shifted. Understanding this helps you figure out what their return actually means. If they come back during a crisis, they might just be looking for comfort. If they return when life is stable, it might mean they've actually been thinking and growing. There's also what I call ego returning. Some avoidants come back not because they miss you, but because they can't stand the idea of you being happy without them. This isn't jealousy exactly, it's more about control and their sense of being the more independent one. These avoidants spent months thinking of you as someone who needed them more than they needed you. Finding out you've moved on and are doing great challenges this story and threatens their sense of being the one with more power. You can spot these returns because they happen right after the avoidant finds out you're dating someone new or looking particularly happy on social media. The timing gives it away. These are the most annoying returns because they're not about wanting real connection, they're about restoring the balance of power the avoidant thought they had. Once they've confirmed they can still get your attention, they often lose interest quickly. The most genuine returns happen when avoidants reach out for no obvious reason, when they've been thinking about you during normal moments rather than during crises or after seeing you've moved on. One thing that always surprises people is how often avoidants come back to people who have completely moved on. There's something about genuine indifference that actually feels safe to them. If you're not invested in what happens, you're less likely to pressure them for more than they can handle. This creates a weird situation where the people most likely to get avoidance back are often the ones who no longer want them. It's not mean or calculated, it's just how their mind works. They feel safest approaching someone who won't try to trap them. If you've dealt with an avoidant who keeps coming back, the important thing is learning to tell the difference between the various types and reasons. Not every return deserves the same response, and not every returning avoidant is ready for the kind of relationship you might want. The returns that actually lead to lasting change usually come with accountability, self-awareness, and real evidence that they've been working on their patterns. Talk is cheap. Changed behavior is what counts. What really gets me about this whole thing is how avoidance can be so predictable, yet still surprise you. I've seen the same guy disappear for 8 months, then show up like nothing happened because he saw his ex's Instagram story at a coffee shop they used to go to together. Meanwhile, his friends are all telling him he's crazy for reaching out, but he literally can't help himself. The worst part is watching people get caught up in this cycle over and over. They'll take the avoidant back, things will be amazing for a few weeks, and then slowly the same patterns creep back in. The avoidant starts feeling suffocated again, starts creating little bits of distance, and before you know it, they're pulling away again. I've noticed that avoidants have this weird relationship with timing. They'll leave you when you need them most, then come back when you least expect it. Your birthday? They're nowhere to be found. Random Tuesday 3 months later when you're finally feeling good about yourself? That's when they text. It's like they have a sixth sense for when you're emotionally unavailable to them. The moment you stop checking your phone hoping for their message, the moment you delete their number, the moment you start genuinely enjoying your single life, that's when they reappear. And they always come back so casually too, never with a big apology or explanation. It's always something like, "Hey, how's work going?" or "Saw something that reminded me of you." Like they didn't completely vanish from your life for months. The really frustrating thing is how good they are at acting like nothing major happened. They'll reference inside jokes, ask about your family, mention plans you made together before they disappeared. It's like they've been mentally keeping track of your life even while physically staying away. Some avoidants I've known have admitted they check up on people through social media constantly after they leave. They'll watch every Instagram story, keep tabs on who you're hanging out with, notice when you post photos that show you're having fun without them, but they won't actually reach out until something specific triggers them. That trigger is usually one of two things. Either you look too happy without them, or you look like you're struggling and they feel safe approaching. Both scenarios feed into their need to feel important in your life without actually having to commit to being consistently present. The ones who come back when you're struggling are often looking to play rescuer. They want to swoop in, be the hero, remind you how good things were between you. These returns usually don't last because once you're feeling better, they start feeling trapped again. The ones who come back when you're thriving are usually driven by ego. They can't handle seeing you flourish without them because it challenges their belief that they were the best thing in your life. These returns are often more persistent, but also more manipulative. I've seen avoidants come back with elaborate explanations about how they needed to work on themselves or figure things out. Sometimes this is genuine, but often it's just sophisticated-sounding language for, "I got lonely and decided you weren't as suffocating as I thought." Real growth in an avoidant looks different. It's not dramatic declarations about personal transformation. It's small, consistent changes in how they communicate, how they handle conflict, how they respond when they start feeling overwhelmed. It's choosing to talk through feelings instead of disappearing. The avoidants who actually change are usually the ones who've hit some kind of wall. Maybe they've done this cycle with multiple people and finally realized they're the common denominator. Maybe they've reached an age where playing games feels exhausting. Maybe they've seen friends in stable relationships and realized what they're missing. But change is slow and often comes with setbacks. Even avoidants who are genuinely trying to be different will sometimes default to old patterns when they feel stressed or overwhelmed. The difference is that the ones who are really changing will catch themselves, apologize, and try to do better next time. One thing I've learned is that you can't love an avoidant into security. You can't be patient enough, understanding enough, or independent enough to fix their patterns. They have to want to change, and they have to do the work themselves. The people who handle avoidant cycles best are the ones who don't take it personally. They understand that the leaving and returning isn't really about them. It's about the avoidant's internal struggle with intimacy. They set boundaries, protect their own emotional well-being, and don't put their life on hold waiting for someone to figure themselves out. If you're dealing with an avoidant who keeps cycling in and out of your life, the most important thing you can do is stay grounded in your own worth. Don't let their inconsistency determine your value. Don't let their fear of closeness make you question whether you're lovable. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for both yourself and an avoidant is to break the cycle by not being available when they try to return. It forces them to confront the consequences of their patterns and might actually motivate real change instead of just temporary comfort seeking. Have you experienced this cycle with an avoidant in your life? What was different about the times they came back versus the times they stayed away? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else understand their own situation better. And if this helped you make sense of avoidant behavior patterns, hit that like button and subscribe for more insights into attachment and relationships.